Hey everyone, welcome to this month's question of the month. I'm David Keil. I answer a question every month. If you've got a question you'd like to submit, go to yoganatomy.com/myquestion. So this month's question comes from Martina. She has a question about headstand. A lot of questions about headstand. Is it really safe? Question number one. And a big question. I read some opinions about how risky it can be for the neck. I understand that weight should be mostly on the arms, not the head, but still, when I try to get into headstand, even a small amount of pressure on my head feels very uncomfortable. Is it maybe better first to try to learn handstand or forearm stand? Thanks. Martina, yes, a good question. Is headstand safe? Well, if you have pre-existing conditions, let's always stipulate that, of course, if you have pre-existing conditions, whether it be something like a glaucoma or cervical injury, herniated discs that you know of, then there's always a larger question of how safe is it and what type of technique should you do. Maybe you can use a headstanding chair or something like that. I would say handstand is not even, no. Handstand doesn't replace headstand. Forearm balance gets closer, but that brings other issues into play around balance and arm strength. So there was a research paper, I should have it with me actually, where they did evaluations of people going into and out of headstands and the amount of pressure on the head and neck. And without a doubt, the transition phase is where you see a peak of force and pressure going into the head and neck. If I'm not mistaken, they use like they have like pressure plates where they can measure how much force ends up going into something. So it peaked in the transition phase. That research was interesting. They had a different variety of practitioners. And they had people enter in a few different ways with bent knees, one leg at a time, I think, and then the third one was with straight legs. And the straight legs had the least amount of pressure on the head. Having said that, I would be curious. That doesn't mean that straight legs is always better than bent knees. It's not always possible. I don't know. It's possible that the people who went up with straight legs were more advanced practitioners, because that's typically harder. It's a harder way to get into it. More advanced practitioners are probably going to maintain more weight on their forearms and elbows. What would be interesting to me is have the same practitioners go into headstand in 3 different ways and take measurements of the same people doing it in 3 different ways. That way you eliminate the potential for practitioner level to be a factor. Okay, so anyway, so is it safe? Again, sometimes walking across the street is not safe, so it's relatively safe posture. We do not normally hear about people getting injured in headstand. Does it happen? Of course it happens. Every posture has a potential to create injury, but it's not the most common. What I would say is stick with doing more preparatory work so you can maintain more pressure on your forearms and elbows, dolphin, this kind of stuff, or walk your feet up the wall and not so high, and be able to make sure you can press down. I've got loads of articles about serratus anterior as it relates to headstand as well. That's a possibility. And I'll just mention one last thing, which is proportions can matter sometimes in headstand, especially when it comes to the amount of pressure you're getting into your head and neck. If you have, relatively speaking, long neck, head compared to your upper arm, which is where it has to fit inside of, if that's the case, you're more likely to have more weight on the head and harder to maintain it in the elbows. Whereas if you had longer upper arms and your head and neck were, relatively speaking, shorter, it would be easier to keep your head away from the floor. So it's another possibility that you should keep in mind. You'd have to, I don't know, take pictures, take a video, look at how everything fits together. All right? I hope that helped a little bit and answered some of that question. Okay, anybody else? You got a question, you know what to do. yoganatomy.com/my question.